Hi, so welcome to session number 3 of this course on AI, law and ethics. It's a pleasure to have you here, so I hope you enjoyed the previous presentations. So what I'm going to do here, it's in a way actually we've already talked a lot about all these issues, and among almost on every slide I presented before, I was using already in an analytical way what were the consequences for the competition policy. So I'm going to focus a little more on the US and Europe because they are the big players in the world, representing close to 40% of the world GDP, and having broader impacts actually than just this 40% of the world GDP, because they are big trade partners, and hence their jurisprudence applies to countries outside of their jurisdictions. Anyways, these principles go beyond actually. So I kept, and you see that on this slide, I kept the slides consistent. So this is the 5th sequence we studied from the analog economy to the digital economy, from the digital economy to the platform economy, from the platform economy to the hub economy. We looked at the question of distortion and collision, and we are now looking at the considerations for the competition policy. As I said in my conclusion in the previous video, yes, we have actually a paradoxical situation. So something that's incredibly positive with great innovations, and something that that can be also negative, because it can prevent actually the rise of these companies, can prevent some innovation of some sort. So we need to pay attention with this paradoxical situation. So what would be the model of open digital ecosystems that we often use? So it's usually based on the 3 elements. We talk about complementarities between players, we talk about the pooling of resources, and the facilitation of innovations developed by complementers. So that would be the core, the essence of this model of digital ecosystems. And the literature interested in market competition is increasingly focused on 2 important questions. The first one is the damage to innovation that can result from the strategy of dominant firms. And that's, again, what I mentioned a lot actually in the past slides. But also the damage to trading partners that can also stem from these strategies and using these technologies, and from the digital natives. So, for instance, the acquisition strategy, it's not systematically negative for the consumer in terms of welfare. The very investment capacities of dominant operators, their technological resources and advantages of size, scope, combined with the network effect the dominant platforms have, may lead to potential innovations initially developed by complementers and being improved and proposed at a much lower price, if not, in our world, free. So 2 competitive harms remain. So it can be the reduction of consumers' freedom of choice. So the liberty of choice for consumers is important, but also the possibility, the freedom of competitors to enter the market may disappear, may be hampered by these strategies. So we can also be in situations where actually the dominant firm will clone innovation, will benefit from it, informational situation. So that's issues actually for the competition policy, and these strategies for eliminating potential competition can be implemented within digital ecosystems. As I said, complementers maybe not in a good situation vis-a-vis the keystone player, and I'm not judging actually Amazon, but a formal procedure has been opened against Amazon by the European Commission in September 2018 on the claim that Amazon enjoys a decisive informational advantage over its complementors. And what may be these advantages? What are these advantages? Well, the capacity for early detection. We talked about the proximity to the generation of information. Here, it's really being able to tap into this information pool generated by the complementors. The financial capacity as well, the market position that makes anti-competitive foreclosure possible, and the technical, financial, and human capacities to outperform third parties in terms of innovation. So it's the complementer may not be in a good position, and the process of innovation and competition can be hampered by this economic power. So we definitely, in our framework, we definitely need to look at that. So, and we talk about scenarios of damage to innovation and damage to trading partners, as we said before. So, and the questions around these issues is how can we assess the effects of digital ecosystems on innovation incentives, both for the dominant platform, but also for the other members of its ecosystem. And that's not a trivial question. I mean, it's a very complicated matter. And will the former benefit from a right to be lazy, and the latter be discouraged from innovating? And that's precisely the question of our article. So, and it comes with, you remember this slide with the two purple and gray curves. So suddenly, even if we are in an exponential shape curve, it can also actually reduce innovation in a way. I mean, with the lazy monopoly or lazy monopolistic situation. So the big question from a legal perspective is the market position, gatekeeper and structuring platforms still contestable? So the question of the contestability. Then the question of balance in the contracts. So are contractual relationships with complementors unbalanced at the expense of their capacity to innovate? And then can the core structure of innovation be altered by this situation? So maybe choosing incremental innovations for a complementer rather than radical innovations, being in the kill zone through M&A, for instance, and fixing exclusionary practices, and also the lock-in situation that complementers may find themselves in when it comes to these relationships with the keystone players. So for competition policy, the question remains how to prevent and how to remedy to such situations. And those are not trivial questions to ask. So the damages can be difficult to characterize in terms of efficiency, in terms of innovation. So we talked about radical ones versus incremental ones. In terms of trading partners, the liberty to choose for a consumer, and perhaps the market process itself. So it's really, so we need to also keep in mind that it's really a trade-off actually between short-term efficiency gains and long-term alleged risks. So we also had some classical debates in the history of competition law and economics. The question of fairness versus efficiency, the liberty to access the market as a value in itself, the scope of essential facilities, and the impact on incentives to invest and to innovate. The question of false negatives as well and false positives. So all these debates, in a way, are still current with these new technologies and the transformation. But what I really want you to insist on, I mean, if I can wrap up a little bit before moving to the next session on AI and ethics, is that we did this overview actually of what is the new market dynamics nowadays. considering and having a perspective from industrial organization and competition policy. So this overview allowed us to look at the changes and how, I mean, it's beyond radical. It's actually architectural changes we've observed. So it was pretty interesting to look at all these changes and how they bring a lot of benefits. But we also need actually to find this balance and look at the competition policies, whether they are still adequate, adapted to all these incredible changes, if they can keep pace, if you want, in many ways, and how we can adjust actually these competition policies, how we can also adjust the incentives on the markets so that we avoid actually the wrong consequences and the challenges we talked about during these three presentations. But I would like to thank you for your attention and highlight actually the next session, which is about AI and ethics. Thank you.